Dr. David Rodriguez never thought his Tuesday morning would change his life forever. He was sitting in his small office at the Global Research Center, drinking his third cup of coffee and reviewing alien biology reports when his boss walked in, with news that made his hands shake. "David, we need you downstairs. Now." Director Johnson's voice was serious, more serious than David had ever heard it. "We have a special guest, and you're going to be her primary researcher." David had been working with alien species for 5 years now. Ever since Earth made contact with other worlds in 2142, scientists like him studied different alien races to understand how they lived, what they needed, and how humans could work with them peacefully. It was usually boring work, testing blood samples, measuring brain waves, writing endless reports that nobody really read. But this was different. When David walked into the underground research lab, he stopped breathing for a moment. Behind thick glass walls sat the most beautiful and terrifying being he had ever seen. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that looked like it was made of silver crystals. Her eyes were deep purple, and they seemed to glow with their own light. Long white hair flowed down her back like liquid moonlight. "Meet Queen Zafira," Director Johnson said quietly, "leader of the Crystal Empire. Her fleet attacked one of our mining stations last month." David's heart sank. He had read about the attack in the news. 12 humans had died. But looking at the alien queen now, sitting perfectly still with her hands folded in her lap, she didn't look like a monster. She looked sad. "What exactly am I supposed to do with her?" David asked. "Study her. Learn about her species. Find out their weaknesses." Johnson's voice got colder. "The government wants to know everything about these crystal people. How they think. How they fight. How we can beat them if they attack again." David nodded, but something in his stomach felt wrong. He had become a scientist to help people, not to find ways to hurt them. Over the next few days, David spent hours sitting across from Queen Zafira, trying to communicate. She spoke perfect English, which surprised him. Her voice was like music, soft and flowing, even when she was angry. "Why do you stare at me like I'm some kind of animal?" she asked on the 3rd day. David felt his face get hot. "I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand your people better." "My people?" She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "My people are dying while I sit in this glass box. My daughter thinks I'm dead. My kingdom is falling apart, and you want to understand me?" That night, David couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what she had said. A daughter, a kingdom falling apart. This wasn't just an alien enemy. She was a mother, a leader, someone with real problems and real pain. The next morning, David noticed something that made his blood run cold. Queen Zafira was getting weaker. Her crystal skin, which had been bright silver, was turning gray. Her purple eyes were getting dim. "Are you feeling okay?" he asked her. She looked at him for a long moment. "Your earth air is poison to my kind. We can only breathe it for a short time before we start to die." David's hands started shaking. "How long do you have?" "Maybe 2 weeks, maybe less." That evening, David went straight to Director Johnson's office. "She's dying," he said. "We need to get her the right kind of air, or medicine, or something." Johnson barely looked up from his papers. "That's not our problem, David. We just need her information before she goes." "Before she goes? You mean before she dies?" "These aliens attacked us first. 12 of our people are dead because of her." David wanted to scream. "But she's dying right in front of us. We can save her." "Our job is to protect humanity, not aliens." Johnson's voice was final. "Get back to work." David walked home that night feeling sick. How could they just let her die? Yes, her people had attacked humans, but that didn't mean she deserved to suffer like this. And what about her daughter? What about her kingdom? For 3 days, David tried to focus on his regular work, but he couldn't stop thinking about Queen Zafira. Every time he saw her, she looked weaker. Her beautiful crystal skin was almost completely gray now. She could barely lift her head. On Friday afternoon, David made a decision that would change everything. He stayed late at the research center until everyone else went home. Then he snuck down to the medical storage room and found what he was looking for: atmospheric converters that could change Earth air into the kind of air that crystal people needed to breathe. His hands were shaking as he carried the equipment down to Queen Zafira's cell. She was lying on the floor, barely breathing. "Hey," he whispered, "I brought you something." She opened her eyes slowly. "What are you doing, human?" "My name is David, and I'm trying to save your life." It took him an hour to set up the atmospheric converter. He had to be quiet, careful not to trigger any alarms. If anyone caught him, his career would be over. He might even go to prison for helping an enemy alien. But as soon as the converter started working, Queen Zafira began to change. Color flowed back into her crystal skin. Her purple eyes started glowing again. She sat up slowly, staring at David in amazement. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk everything for me?" David sat down on the floor across from her. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because you're someone's mother. Because—" He stopped, trying to find the right words. "Because I became a scientist to help people, not watch them die." For the first time since David had met her, Queen Zafira smiled. It was like watching the sun come up. "You don't know what you've done," she said softly. "Your people will never forgive you for this." David nodded. "I know. But I couldn't live with myself if I just watched you die." That night, for the first time in weeks, both David and Queen Zafira slept peacefully. Neither of them knew that security cameras had recorded everything David had done. Neither of them knew that Director Johnson would be watching that footage first thing Monday morning. And neither of them knew that this one act of kindness would start a chain of events that would change both their worlds forever. As David walked home through the empty streets, he felt scared, but also strangely proud. He had risked everything to save a life. Maybe that made him a traitor to some people, but it made him feel more human than he ever had before. Behind him, in her glass cell, Queen Zafira touched the atmospheric converter gently. No human had ever shown her such kindness. In her culture, enemies were enemies forever. But this strange human scientist had shown her that maybe, just maybe, there was hope for peace between their worlds after all. The real question was, would either of them survive long enough to see it happen? Monday morning came too fast for David. He walked into the Global Research Center with his stomach full of butterflies, trying to act normal. He grabbed his usual coffee, nodded to the security guards, and headed down to the underground lab like he did every day. But today was different. Today, Director Johnson was waiting for him. "David, my office, now." Johnson's face was stone cold. David's heart started pounding. Did they know? Had someone seen him with the atmospheric converter? He followed Johnson upstairs, his legs feeling like jelly. Johnson closed the door and pulled out a tablet. "Want to explain this to me?" The tablet showed security footage from Friday night. David watched himself sneaking into the medical storage room, carrying equipment down to Queen Zafira's cell, setting up the atmospheric converter. Everything was there, clear as day. David's mouth went dry. "I can explain." "You better." Johnson sat down behind his desk. "Because right now, it looks like you committed treason. You gave aid to an enemy alien. Do you know what that means, David?" "She was dying," David said quietly. "I couldn't just watch her die." "She's a war criminal. Her people killed 12 humans. But she's also someone's mother. She has a daughter who thinks she's dead." David's voice got stronger. "I became a scientist to help people, not to watch them suffer." Johnson shook his head. "You're so naive, David. This isn't about one alien. This is about protecting humanity. What happens when other aliens see that we're soft? What happens when they think they can attack us and we'll just give them medical care? For the next 3 hours, Johnson tried to convince David to change his story. Just say she tricked you. Say she used some kind of alien mind control. We can spin this whole thing, make you look like a victim instead of a traitor. But David refused. I won't lie about what I did, and I won't apologize for saving someone's life. Meanwhile, down in the lab, Queen Zafira was feeling stronger than she had in weeks. The atmospheric converter had saved her life, but she knew David was in trouble because of it. Through her cell's glass walls, she could see the worried faces of the other scientists. She could hear them whispering about security investigations and government agents. That afternoon, Dr. Lisa Chen, David's closest friend at the research center, came to visit Queen Zafira. Lisa had always been curious about alien cultures, and she wanted to understand what made David risk everything. Why did he do it? Lisa asked through the intercom system. Why did he save you? Queen Zafira was quiet for a long moment. In my world, enemies are enemies forever. We fight until one side wins completely. But your friend David, he saw past that. He saw me not as an enemy, but as a living being who needed help. But your people attacked our mining station. People died. Yes, Queen Zafira said sadly. My people were desperate. Your mining ships were taking crystals from our sacred grounds. It would be like aliens coming to Earth and digging up your churches. My military commanders acted without thinking. I should have stopped them. Lisa stared at the alien queen. This wasn't what she expected to hear. In the news, the crystal people were always shown as mindless attackers. But Queen Zafira sounded genuinely sorry about what had happened. Do you have family? Lisa asked. Queen Zafira's eyes grew bright with tears. A daughter, Princess Luna. She's only 16 in your years. When I didn't return from the peace talks, my people told her I was killed in battle. She thinks I'm dead. Peace talks? That's why I came to this part of space. I was trying to meet with human leaders to apologize for the attack and find a way to prevent more fighting. But your military ships surrounded mine instead. They brought me here as a prisoner. Lisa felt her heart sink. You weren't planning another attack? I was planning to surrender myself to prevent a war. That evening, Lisa went straight to David's apartment. She found him sitting on his couch, staring at a government letter that had arrived that afternoon. What does it say? She asked. David handed her the letter. I'm being charged with treason. The trial starts next week. If they find me guilty, I could spend the rest of my life in prison. Lisa sat down next to him. David, I talked to Queen Zafira today. She told me why she was really here. She wasn't planning to attack anyone. She was trying to make peace. It doesn't matter now, David said. I broke the law. I helped an enemy alien. The government doesn't care about my reasons. But what if we could prove she's not really an enemy? What if we could show that this whole thing is a mistake? David looked at his friend. How? We tell everyone the truth. We hold a press conference. We let Queen Zafira speak for herself. Lisa, that's crazy. We'd both lose our jobs. We'd probably both go to prison. Maybe. But maybe we'd also prevent a war. The next day, David made the hardest decision of his life. He called every news reporter he could find and invited them to the research center for what he called an important announcement about human-alien relations. Director Johnson tried to stop him, but David had already sent out the invitations. By afternoon, dozens of reporters and camera crews were gathered outside the research center. David stood in front of the cameras with his hands shaking. Behind him, on a large screen, Queen Zafira appeared via video link from her cell. My name is Dr. David Rodriguez, he began. 3 weeks ago, I was assigned to study Queen Zafira of the Crystal Empire. What I discovered will shock you. For the next hour, David told the world everything. He explained how Queen Zephyra had been dying from Earth's atmosphere. He showed video of her growing weaker each day. He talked about her daughter, her kingdom, her real mission of peace. Then Queen Zephyra spoke. In her musical voice, she apologized for the attack on the mining station. She explained about the sacred crystals and her people's desperation. She talked about her daughter, who thought she was dead. She begged for a chance to make things right between their worlds. By the time the press conference ended, half the reporters were crying. The footage spread across Earth and the galaxy within hours. Save Queen Zephyra started trending on social media. Millions of people demanded her release, but the government wasn't happy. That night, David was arrested. As the police put handcuffs on him, he saw Queen Zephyra watching from her cell window. She pressed her hand against the glass, and somehow David felt a warm feeling in his mind, like she was saying thank you without words. 2 days later, under massive public pressure, the government released Queen Zephyra back to her people. Before she left, she asked to see David one last time. "You saved my life," she told him through the prison visitor's phone. "But more than that, you saved my soul. I had lost faith that different species could ever understand each other. You proved me wrong." "I just did what felt right," David said. Queen Zephyra smiled. "In my culture, we have a saying, the bravest warriors are those who fight for their enemies' children. You fought for my daughter without even knowing her. That makes you the bravest human I've ever met." She reached through the small window and touched David's forehead. Suddenly, his mind filled with warm golden light. Images flashed through his thoughts. A beautiful crystal city. A young alien girl crying for her mother. A queen's love for her people. "I will never forget you, David Rodriguez," Queen Zephyra whispered. "And someday, when both our worlds are ready, I hope we meet again." David served 3 years in prison, but they were the easiest 3 years of his life. Letters poured in from around the world, calling him a hero. Books were written about his story. Movies were made about the human who risked everything for an alien queen. When he was finally released, David found a small package waiting at his apartment. Inside was a crystal flower, perfectly carved, that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The note said simply, "For the human who taught an alien queen about compassion. Z." David kept that crystal flower on his desk for the rest of his life. And sometimes, late at night, he swore he could feel Queen Zephyra thinking about him from somewhere among the stars, wondering if they would ever see each other again. Neither of them knew that the answer was yes, but it would take 15 long years before fate brought them back together. 15 years had passed since David Rodriguez walked out of prison, and the world had changed in ways nobody could have imagined. What started as one man's act of kindness had grown into something much bigger, a movement that changed how humans and aliens saw each other forever. David stood in his small apartment in New Tokyo, looking out at the busy streets below. Flying cars moved between buildings like schools of fish, and on the sidewalks, humans walked alongside aliens from dozens of different worlds. It was a sight that still amazed him even after all these years. His phone buzzed with another interview request. Ever since his book, Beyond the Stars, One Human's Journey to Understanding, became a bestseller, everyone wanted to talk to him. Movie producers, news reporters, university students. They all wanted to hear the story of the man who risked everything for an alien queen. But David was tired of telling that story. It had been 15 years, and people still acted like he was some kind of hero. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt like a man who had done what anyone with a heart should do. His friend Carlos knocked on the door. "Ready for another adventure?" Carlos asked with a grin. Carlos ran a company that helped solve problems between different alien species, and he often asked David to help with the really difficult cases. "Where are we going this time?" David asked, grabbing his travel bag. "The Andromeda colonies. The fish people and the rock people are fighting again. Something about fishing rights in the crystal seas." David laughed. After 15 years of this work, he had learned that most alien conflicts were just like human conflicts, usually about resources, territory, or misunderstandings that got out of hand. As their spaceship lifted off from Earth, David found himself thinking about Queen Zephyra, like he did almost every day. He wondered if she was still alive, if she had rebuilt her kingdom, if her daughter Princess Luna was grown up now. He still kept the crystal flower she had given him on his bedside table, and sometimes he swore it glowed a little brighter when he thought about her. Meanwhile, thousands of light years away, Queen Zephyra stood on the balcony of her rebuilt palace, watching the twin suns set over the Crystal Empire. Her kingdom was stronger now than it had ever been. The attack on the human mining station 15 years ago had taught her people valuable lessons about diplomacy and understanding, but success felt empty somehow. "Mother, the trade delegates from the water worlds are here," Princess Luna said, walking onto the balcony. Luna had grown into a beautiful and wise young woman, with her mother's silver crystal skin and kind purple eyes. "Thank you, my daughter. I'll meet with them shortly." Luna studied her mother's face. "You're thinking about the human again, aren't you?" Zephyra smiled sadly. Luna always knew what she was thinking. "Is it that obvious? You get that same look every year on the anniversary of your return. You stare toward Earth's star and touch that pressed flower he gave you." It was true. David had brought Zephyra a simple earth flower during one of their conversations, and she had pressed it between the pages of a book about human culture. 15 years later, she still kept it in a crystal case on her desk. "Do you ever regret not going to find him?" Luna asked gently. Zephyra was quiet for a long moment. "Every day. But I had responsibilities. A kingdom to rebuild, a people to lead, a daughter to raise. I'm grown up now, Mother. The kingdom is strong. Maybe it's time to think about what would make you happy." That same week, both David and Zephyra received news that would change everything. Strange signals were being detected at the edge of known space. Ships were disappearing. Entire colonies were going silent. Something was coming, something that threatened every living world in the galaxy. The Galactic Council called an emergency. Meeting on Harmony Station, the neutral space station where representatives from all species could meet safely. David was invited as Earth's chief advisor on alien relations. Queen Zephyra would attend as leader of the Crystal Empire. Neither of them knew the other would be there. David arrived at Harmony Station feeling nervous. This was the biggest crisis since he had started his mediation work. Ships were disappearing faster now, and the few survivors who escaped told stories of creatures that seemed to eat entire planets. He was reviewing the latest reports when the station's announcement system crackled to life. "Now arriving, Her Royal Majesty Queen Zephyra of the Crystal Empire." David's coffee cup slipped from his hands and shattered on the floor. After 15 years of wondering, of hoping, of dreaming about seeing her again, she was here, on the same station, breathing the same recycled air. His hands started shaking just like they had all those years ago in the research lab. In the royal docking bay, Queen Zephyra stepped off her crystal ship with Luna and her royal guards. She had been to Harmony Station many times over the years, but today felt different. There was electricity in the air, like the feeling before a lightning storm. "Mother, are you all right?" Luna asked. "You look pale." "I'm fine," Zephyra lied. But she wasn't fine. Something was pulling at her heart, telling her that today would change everything. She touched the small crystal pendant around her neck, a gift from David 15 years ago that she had never taken off. That evening, the great assembly hall filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. David sat with the human delegation, trying to focus on the crisis reports but finding his eyes scanning the crowd for a familiar face. Queen Zephyra entered the hall with her daughter, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Even after 15 years, she was still the most beautiful being David had ever seen. Her crystal skin caught the light like a prism, and her purple eyes were just as kind and intelligent as he remembered. For a moment, their eyes met across the crowded room. Time stopped. 15 years of separation, of wondering, of missing each other crashed together in that single look. David's heart started pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. Zephyra's crystal skin began to glow softly, something that only happened when she felt strong emotions. They stared at each other for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then the council leader called for attention, and both of them had to look away, had to pretend they were focused on the crisis at hand. But neither of them heard a single word about disappearing ships or mysterious creatures. All they could think about was that the person they had never stopped loving was sitting just 50 feet away, close enough to touch, but separated by duty, protocol, and 15 years of different lives. When the meeting ended, David wanted desperately to go to her, to say hello, to ask about her daughter and her kingdom, and whether she still thought about him sometimes. But she was surrounded by guards and advisors, and he was just one human in a crowd of hundreds. As Queen Zephyra left the assembly hall, she turned back once. Her eyes found David's in the crowd, and she smiled, the same warm, beautiful smile that had haunted his dreams for 15 years. That night, neither of them slept. David lay in his small station quarters, staring at the ceiling and remembering every conversation he had ever had with Queen Zephyra. She was so close now, just a few corridors away. But she was also further away than ever, a queen with responsibilities, while he was just a traveling mediator with no home and no family. In her royal suite, Queen Zephyra stood at the window looking out at the stars. Princess Luna found her there at 3 in the morning. "You saw him, didn't you?" Luna asked softly. "Yes." And nothing has changed. He's still the bravest, kindest man I've ever known, and I'm still a queen who can't afford to follow her heart. But Luna smiled. "Mother, haven't you learned anything from your own story? Sometimes the greatest courage is admitting what you really want." Neither David nor Queen Zephyra knew that in just a few hours, news would arrive that would force them to work together again. News that would put everything they cared about in terrible danger and give them one more chance to find out if love could really conquer everything, even time, duty, and the vast emptiness of space. The emergency alarm on Harmony Station woke everyone at 4 in the morning. David jumped out of bed, his heart racing. Emergency alarms on the station only meant one thing. Something terrible had happened. He threw on his clothes and ran to the main communications center, where hundreds of other delegates were gathering. The giant screen at the front of the room showed Admiral Torres, commander of the Galactic Defense Fleet, with fear written all over his face. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all species," Admiral Torres began, "3 hours ago, we lost contact with the entire Vega colony system. Population, 47 million souls from 12 different worlds." The room went completely silent. David felt his stomach drop. 47 million people, just gone? "Our scout ships found this," Torres continued. The screen changed to show what looked like empty space where the Vega system should have been. No planets, no moons, no space stations, nothing but darkness and floating debris. A voice from the crowd called out, "Where did everything go?" "Consumed," Torres said grimly, "by creatures we're calling the Devourers. They appear to eat entire planets, leaving nothing behind. And they're moving toward the core worlds." David's blood turned to ice. The core worlds included Earth, the Crystal Empire, and dozens of other heavily populated systems. Billions of lives were at stake. "How long do we have?" someone asked. "Based on their current speed, the Devourers will reach the outer core worlds in 6 days, Earth and the Crystal Empire in 10. the room erupted in panic. Representatives from different species started arguing about evacuation plans, defense, strategies, and who should be saved first. David watched the chaos with growing horror. If they couldn't work together, everyone would die. That's when Queen Zephyra stood up. Enough! Her voice cut through the noise like a crystal bell. The entire room fell silent. This is exactly what these creatures want. They want us to panic, to fight each other, to waste precious time on fear instead of action. She walked to the center of the room, her crystal skin glowing with determination. 15 years ago, a human taught me that different species can work together if they choose courage over fear. Today, we must all choose courage. David's heart started pounding. She was talking about him, about what had happened between them all those years ago. Queen Zephyra continued, I propose we form a united defense force. Every species, every ship, every weapon working together, but we need someone to coordinate this effort. Someone who understands all our different species and how we can work as one. Her purple eyes found David's in the crowd. I nominate Dr. David Rodriguez as our coordinator. The room started buzzing with conversation. David felt hundreds of eyes turning to look at him. Some faces showed respect. They knew his story, knew how he had brought humans and crystal people together. But others looked doubtful. Could one human really coordinate a defense involving dozens of different alien species? Admiral Torres spoke up. Dr. Rodriguez, are you willing to take on this responsibility? David's mouth went dry. This was bigger than anything he had ever done before. If he failed, entire worlds would die. But as he looked at Queen Zephyra's face, he remembered something she had told him 15 years ago. The bravest warriors are those who fight for their enemies' children. Yes, he said, standing up. I'll do it. The next 3 days were a blur of activity. David worked 18 hours a day, coordinating with military leaders from dozens of worlds. The humans brought their fast attack ships. The crystal people offered their energy shields. The rock people from Titan provided heavy weapons. The water beings from Neptune contributed their healing technology. But the hardest part wasn't the technology. It was getting everyone to trust each other. Species that had been enemies for centuries had to work side by side. Old prejudices and fears kept getting in the way. David found himself working closely with Queen Zephyra every day. She had volunteered to be his second-in-command, helping translate between different species and cultures. Being near her again was both wonderful and painful. She was still the same kind, intelligent woman he had fallen in love with 15 years ago, but she seemed more distant now, more formal. Late one night, as they worked alone in the strategy room, David finally found the courage to speak. Zephyra, he said softly, I've missed you. She looked up from the star charts they were studying. For a moment, her formal mask slipped, and he saw the woman he remembered, warm, caring, vulnerable. I've missed you too, David, every day for 15 years. Then why do you feel so far away now? She sighed. Because I'm not the same person you knew. I'm a queen now, with responsibilities to billions of lives. I can't afford to have personal feelings when so many people depend on me. Your feelings are what make you a good queen, David said. They're what make you fight so hard to protect your people. Before Zephyra could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Admiral Torres's voice echoed through the speakers. All hands to battle stations. The Devourers have accelerated their approach. They'll reach the Crystal Empire in 2 days. David and Zephyra looked at each other in horror. They had expected 10 days to prepare. Now they had less than 48 hours. There's something else, Torres continued. Princess Luna's exploration fleet was conducting research near the Empire's edge. They were caught in the Devourer's path. Their ships went silent 3 hours ago. David watched Queen Zephyra's face go completely white. Her daughter, the most important person in her world, was missing, probably dead. "No," she whispered, sinking into a chair. "Not Luna. Not my baby." For the first time in 15 years, David saw the powerful Queen Zephira break down completely. She put her face in her hands and sobbed like her heart was being torn apart. Without thinking, David knelt beside her chair and put his arms around her. She didn't pull away. Instead, she buried her face against his shoulder and cried for the daughter she might never see again. "We'll find her," David whispered into her silver hair. "I promise you, we'll find her." "How?" Zephira asked through her tears. "The Devourers consume everything if they caught Luna's ships." "Then we go after them," David said firmly. "We take our best ships, our best fighters, and we go into Devourer space to bring her home." "That's impossible. It's suicide." David lifted her chin so she was looking into his eyes. 15 years ago, you told me I was the bravest human you'd ever met because I fought for your daughter without even knowing her. Well, now I do know her. Luna is kind and smart and brave, just like her mother, and I'm not going to let her die alone in the darkness." Queen Zephira stared at him. "You would really risk everything for her? For us?" "Zephira, I would risk everything for you. I always have, and I always will." For a moment, the years between them melted away. They were just David and Zephira. Again, two people who had found something special in the middle of an impossible situation. "The rescue mission leaves in 6 hours, David announced to the assembled fleet commanders the next morning. "It's completely voluntary. Anyone who goes might not come back." To his amazement, volunteers stepped forward from every species. Humans, crystal people, rock beings, water creatures. Dozens of the galaxy's best pilots raised their hands. "Why?" David asked them. "Why risk your lives for one alien princess?" Captain Rodriguez, a tough human fighter pilot, answered for all of them. "Because 15 years ago you showed us that we're all the same under the skin. Human, alien doesn't matter. When someone's in trouble, we help them. That's what makes us civilized." As the rescue fleet prepared to launch, Queen Zephira took David's hand. "If we don't make it back, we will," David said. "But if we don't, I want you to know something. I never married for love. I married for politics, for my kingdom. But I never stopped loving you, David Rodriguez. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." David squeezed her hand. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, too. And we're going to get Luna back and save the galaxy and figure out what comes next. Together." As their ships launched into the darkness toward the Devourer fleet, both David and Queen Zephira felt something they hadn't felt in 15 years. Hope. Not just for Princess Luna, not just for their worlds, but for themselves and the love they had never been able to forget. The final battle was about to begin, and this time they would face it side by side. The rescue fleet moved through space like shooting stars. 50 ships from a dozen different worlds, all flying toward almost certain death. David sat in the command ship next to Queen Zephira, watching the darkness ahead where the Devourers waited. "Contact on sensors," announced Captain Rodriguez from the pilot's seat. 3 Devourer ships massive size, and wait, I'm picking up life signs from smaller vessels. "They're still alive!" David's heart jumped. "Princess Luna?" "Can't tell yet, but someone's definitely out there." Queen Zephira gripped her chair so hard her crystal knuckles turned white. "How do we get past those creatures?" David studied the tactical display. The Devourer ships were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. They pulsed with dark energy, and around them floated the wreckage of dozens of consumed planets. "We don't fight them head-on," David said slowly. "We distract them." He activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, listen carefully. The Devourers seem to be attracted to large energy sources. The Crystal Empire ships will create a massive energy burst on the far side of their formation. While they're investigating that, the smaller human and Waterworld ships will sneak in and rescue the survivors. That's incredibly dangerous, Captain Rodriguez warned. If the crystal ships get caught, then we don't get caught, Queen, Zafira said firmly. My daughter's life depends on this plan. I'll lead the crystal ships myself. No, David said immediately. You're too important. If something happens to you... David, Queen Zafira touched his hand gently. I've spent 15 years being careful, being responsible, putting duty before everything else. Today, I'm choosing to be brave. I'm choosing to fight for my daughter. Before David could argue, she was gone, running to her ship. 5 minutes later, her voice crackled over the radio. Crystal Fleet ready. Beginning distraction maneuver. In 3, 2, 1. Now! The crystal ship suddenly blazed with brilliant light, brighter than 100 suns. The effect was spectacular, and it worked. The 3 massive Devourer ships immediately turned toward the light, moving away from the area where the survivors were trapped. Go, go, go! David shouted into his radio. The rescue ships shot forward like arrows. David's heart pounded as they weaved between floating debris from destroyed planets. In the distance, he could see Queen Zafira's crystal ships dancing through space, staying just out of reach of the Devourers while keeping their attention focused away from the rescue operation. There, Captain Rodriguez pointed ahead. 3 ships, heavily damaged but intact. The largest ship bore the royal seal of the Crystal Empire, Princess Luna's flagship. Princess Luna, this is Dr. David Rodriguez. Can you hear me? A weak voice responded over the radio. Dr. Rodriguez? Is that really you? Is my mother? She's here, Luna. She's leading the ships that are keeping those monsters busy so we can rescue you. I knew she'd come for me, Luna whispered. I knew she wouldn't leave me to die out here. It took 20 precious minutes to transfer Luna and her crew to the rescue ships. The princess was injured but alive, and her eyes lit up when she saw David through the ship's window. Dr. Rodriguez, she called over the radio. The Devourers! I know how they work. I studied them while we were trapped. They're not just random destroyers. They're farming us. What do you mean? They consume planets to feed something bigger, something that's coming from dark space. If we can find their queen ship and destroy it, the rest will flee back to wherever they came from. David's mind raced. Where is this queen ship? Hidden behind the gas giant in this system. It's enormous, probably 10 times bigger than the others. David looked at his tactical display. Queen Zafira's ships were still playing their dangerous game with the Devourers, but they couldn't keep it up much longer. The creatures were getting smarter, trying to surround the Crystal Fleet. All ships, David announced. New plan. We're going after the Queen ship. Princess Luna will guide us. There. David, that's insane, Captain Rodriguez protested. Our ships aren't built for that kind of fight. Then we don't fight it, David said. We do what I should have done 15 years ago. We talk to it. 20 minutes later, their small fleet emerged from behind the gas giant to find something that took their breath away. The Devourer Queen ship was massive beyond imagination, like a living mountain floating in space. It pulsed with dark energy, and around it swirled the essence of 1,000 consumed worlds. Open a communication channel, David ordered. To that thing? Captain Rodriguez asked. Everything intelligent can be reasoned with, David said, hoping he was right. Queen of the Devourers, this is Dr. David Rodriguez, representing the United Worlds Alliance. We need to talk. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a voice filled their ships, ancient, tired, and infinitely sad. You speak to us? No one has spoken to us in 1,000,000 years. Why are you destroying our worlds? David asked gently. We do not destroy. we preserve. Your species will die eventually. War, disease, time itself. We save you before that happens. We keep you safe inside us forever. David felt his heart break. These creatures weren't evil monsters. They were trying to help in their own terrible way. But we don't want to be preserved, David said. We want to live, to love, to make our own choices, even if those choices sometimes lead to pain. Pain, yes. We remember pain. It is why we began the preservation. Who hurt you? David asked softly. The voice was quiet for a long time. Our children, our worlds, all consumed by war and hatred. We tried to save them, but we were too late. Now we save others before it is too late. David closed his eyes, understanding flooding through him. You're not the devourers. You're the grieving ones. You lost everything you loved, and now you're trying to prevent others from feeling that same pain. Yes, grieving ones. That is what we are. But don't you see? By trying to save us, you're causing the very pain you wanted to prevent. Queen Zephyra is out there risking her life for her daughter. I'm here risking everything for both of them. That's not something to be prevented. That's something to be celebrated. Love, the voice whispered. We had forgotten about love. Then remember, David said urgently. Remember that love is worth the risk, worth the pain, worth everything. Let us live, let us love, let us make our own mistakes and find our own happiness. The massive ship pulsed with different colors now. Not dark energy, but something softer, sadder, more beautiful. We will leave your worlds alone. We will return to the dark spaces and grieve properly for what we have lost. But you, small beings, do not waste the gift of love. Do not let fear keep you from happiness. As the Devourer Queen ship began to fade away, taking its fleet with it, David heard Queen Zephyra's voice over the radio. David, are you all right? The creatures just disappeared. We're fine, David replied, and we're coming home. 6 hours later, the rescue fleet docked at Harmony Station to cheering crowds. David watched Queen Zephyra reunite with Princess Luna, both of them crying with joy and relief. Later that evening, David found Queen Zephyra alone on the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Thank you, she said, without turning around. For saving Luna, for saving all of us. I told you I'd always fight for your family, David said, moving to stand beside her. About that, Queen Zephyra turned to face him. Luna said something interesting to me when we got back. She said she gives me permission to follow my heart for once. Smart girl. She also said she's ready to rule on her own. She thinks it's time for me to retire from being queen and start being just Zephyra. David's heart started pounding. And what does Zephyra want? She stepped closer to him. Zephyra wants what she's wanted for 15 years. She wants to be with the human who taught her about compassion, who risked everything for her twice, who just convinced ancient aliens to choose love over fear. That human wants the same thing, David whispered. They moved toward each other slowly, like they were afraid this was all a dream that might disappear. When their lips finally met, David felt like he was coming home after 15 years of wandering. So what happens now? Queen Zephyra asked. Now we figure it out together, David said. Maybe we start that colony we talked about once. A place where humans and crystal people and any species that wants peace can live side by side. That sounds perfect. 5 years later, David and Zephyra stood together on the balcony of their home on New Harmony, the first truly integrated world in the galaxy. Below them, children from dozens of different species played together in crystal gardens. In the distance, Princess Luna's ship was landing. She visited every month, bringing news from the Crystal Empire and stories of the peaceful galaxy they had all helped create. Do you ever regret it? David asked, wrapping his arms around his wife. Giving up your throne for this life? Queen Zafira, now just Zafira Rodriguez, leaned back against him and smiled. Never. Being a queen was my duty. But being your wife, building this world with you, watching love spread across the galaxy, this is my joy. As the twin suns set over New Harmony, painting the sky in shades of crystal and gold, both David and Zafira knew they had found something worth every risk they had ever taken. Love really could transcend anything, even time, duty, and the vast emptiness of space.